Welcome to everyone that's on the webinar right now. We're going to be starting in about 3 or 4 minutes. We're waiting for more people to join in, and then we'll get started. Before we do kick off the presentation, I do want to ask you just familiarize yourself with the platform a little bit. We certainly want you to ask questions, make this as interactive as possible, so you can add your question to the queue. And the presenters, myself, and we have several people on the back end will be monitoring that, and we'll either get to your questions live during the webinar or we'll answer them through the chat itself. So just give us a few minutes and we'll be right back with you. Well, greetings and welcome to everyone. My name is David Chapa. I will be the host for this webinar, Qumulo beats NETAPP and ISILON hands down. And as I said, we'll be starting in just a couple of minutes. Do want you to make sure you familiarize yourself with the platform. We want to get this as interactive as possible with your questions, and so we want you to enter them into the Ask Question queue there, the Q&A queue. And we will get to those either during the presentation live or we'll answer them in kind from the queue itself. Joining me today is, well, two great people that you may have seen on webinars previously. Tim Kressler, who's our Director of Systems Engineering with Qumulo, and is very, very knowledgeable about actually both of the competitors we're talking about, NETAPP and ISILON, and Aaron Hirsch, who's one of our senior systems engineers with Qumulo. Both of these individuals have a pretty deep understanding of the solutions as well as our own solution, and so I'm looking forward to having this this highly charged conversation about how Qumulo beats both NETAPP and ISILON hands down. And I am David Chapa. I will be your host today. I run competitive intelligence here at Qumulo. I have spent a considerable amount of time working in this industry, working for both of these companies that we'll be talking about, and have some of my own experience as well that I'll be sharing. As we look at how things have changed in data centers, in IT in general, it's been a significant shift over the last 10 years. I think we've always seen, if you've looked at any kind of research data, you've always seen that says data is growing exponentially, and I think that's just that's just the nature of the game. Hard drives are getting bigger, flash drives are coming out, we're storing more data, we're creating more data. There's more and more devices, billions and billions of devices that are connected, that's creating data. And in some cases, it's really critical data for your organization. We have IoT and edge computing, consolidation, data migrations happening. There was a research study done several years ago by IBM where they concluded that we as a society were creating 2.1 quintillion bytes of data every day. Now, this was several years ago. So 2.1 quintillion bytes is equivalent to 2.1 exabytes of data on a daily basis. Now, that's not all critical data, of course, but the fact that we are generating that much data is a significant indicator of the the data sprawl that we're experiencing. And that, along with, the edge computing and IoT, that's created a whole storage churn for us, because it's really a nightmare. I was a storage admin for a while. I used to run storage solutions that were scale-up solutions. They were good for the day, but you couldn't necessarily scale your performance with your storage, and that became a challenge. That became almost a major pain for a lot of us in that seat of storage admin. Many times the legacy solution vendors are difficult to deal with. You got to have a log for this and a log for that. There's, this sequential checklist that you have to go down. And it's the time to resolution with a lot of these problems that you would have with the legacy providers really does increase your own time to success. And it becomes a challenge. They're limited to the path, a limited path to the cloud. So you can do cloud with some of these guys, but with EMC, for example, they really need their hardware in the cloud to make it function. So really, to have a good, solid cloud story, you really have to have disaggregated hardware and software to really have your choice. And I think that's what was about too. The biggest pain is not having a choice of where you can have your storage. You can't see the data. In other words, there's no visibility, there's no insight unless you buy another license. And it becomes more and more expensive. It's a nickel and diming you on your storage solution if you want to get access to your data, see your data, understand what's happening with your data. We have a solution for that, but that's another license you got to buy. And that's just where all the nightmare comes into play. We talk to our customers all the time. As a matter of fact, before this company actually launched, the founders took time to talk with customers to find out what was missing in their current storage solutions, what they needed. So we have taken that forward, and we continue to talk with our customers to find out exactly what they're trying to do, exactly where the gaps are, and what they're most frustrated with. And as a result, we find out that the pain that we assume they're having is actual real pain that customers are having. I want to move to the cloud on my schedule. I want to pick the cloud that I want to move to. Customers are frustrated with customer support. You don't have as many people. If I look at research data all the time, one of the things I don't see growing is IT staff. And so the IT teams are already spread relatively thin. And so, NetApp has the tagline, do more with less, and that doesn't work. You got to do more with what you have. And when you have something that's not going to allow you to scale and get your performance where it needs to be, then you're really taxing your IT team, and it becomes almost demoralizing. So we're going to talk about a lot of these things and more as we jump into this. I know I was giving a couple of teasers on some things, but it's a real serious challenge that customers have. We understand that you have, AI, ML workloads that you're looking at and workflows, and you want to do those on premises, but then there's also an initiative to do it in the cloud, and you want to be able to have that flexibility. And I think that's the important thing for us to think about as we go forward in this is the flexibility, your choice. What's your bill of rights as a storage consumer? You should be able to have your storage anywhere you want to, and use as much of that storage as you want to because you paid for it. I'll read this real quick, but it's becoming an imperative for organizations to stay competitive. And the way you stay competitive is by making decisions based on the information, the data you have. And so if you can make decisions more quickly, then you can remain more competitive in that market. The sad thing is that getting access to that data is difficult sometimes. And we've also found, there was back in the day, there was some of these companies were saying, look, the primary data in an organization is structured data. But we have now finding out that that's not true. It's largely semi-structured or unstructured data. And getting access to that data, bringing that data up so that you can do more with your platform is what it's really all about. So I'm gonna stop talking here. I'm gonna turn over to Tim Tim Kressler to take us into why Qumulo is different. Tim?
Look at me doing webcast error 101 and not coming off of mute when I wanted to start talking. So, hey, everybody. Yeah, so one of the things that we like to emphasize is how different Qumulo is, how we were built from the ground up to let you do pretty much anything you want to do with the storage in terms of storing data, accessing that data, scaling it up, scaling it out, really to meet the needs of your environment. Because I've worked for the competitors for a couple of years, for 7 years actually. I also spent some time in the cloud. And one of the things that's easiest to see about technology today is that we really don't know what we're going to be using the gear we buy today for in 3 years, right? We don't know what kind of files we're going to need. We don't know how much storage we're going to need. We don't know if it's going to be a lot of little files or a lot of big files. And so what was important to Qumulo is letting you build a cluster that meets your needs today, letting you grow that cluster to meet the needs as the business matures and changes and, applications change and, density of images changes and things like that. And then let you continue to manage that completely simply. And you can manage it in an on-prem environment. You can manage it in the cloud. If you're doing it in on-prem, you can mix and match different manufacturers of nodes into your cluster, different sizes of nodes into your cluster to meet your needs, all because we're here to make it easy for you, right? We were built from the ground up to make it easy and simple for you to manage the data that you have in your environment. We've heard this time and time again from our customers, right? Everybody says, they love their first NetApp, they hate their 10th, right? Like those kinds of conversations happen. Everybody needs to know exactly what's going on in their environment, predictive alerting, having access to people who can help you solve problems right away versus kind of having to go through a queue and wait, things like that. Everything that we've done, everything inside of Qumulo has been done to exceed your expectations and to make managing unstructured data at scale as simple and as efficient as possible. We started out and we still continue to have the best support in the business. We have a Net Promoter Score of 91 for the last 8 quarters. We're really we are so committed to making sure that your experience with us is delightful. I actually was helping a customer finish up a POC, a proof of concept, before they made their purchase of Qumulo. And one of the things that they said at the end of the proof of concept was, are we going to get switched to like a worse version of support now that we're not POCing anymore? And my answer was no, we only have one version of support. Every Qumulo customer has access to customer success managers and professional services people to make sure that they get the technology that they need to make sure that they're completely supported in their journey with Qumulo. And our customer success is actually built on Slack and for most of our customers, as long as Slack is okay in your environment. And so Slack also gives the ability for you to have community. So there is a customer channel that anybody can participate in. In that customer channel, people share scripts and ask questions and, kind of get an understanding of the community of use of Qumulo, not just talking to our support folks. We're in the upper right-hand corner for Gartner. For the last 3 years, we expect it to be the 4th this year. Gartner is a great, kind of hallmark for the industry, but also we've received awards from IDC and GigaOM and a variety of other places around the simplicity of our use, the way that we enable technology to grow and scale, the various kind of features that we offer. So we offer a feature called Shift, for instance, and that was awarded recently. We're just, we're here to make sure that you're happy and delighted with your Qumulo experience and are able to continue to move on.
Hey, Tim, can I jump in real fast on something?
Yeah, bud. Yeah.
Go back to that previous slide, because as a former analyst, I geek out on this, right? So this timeline, you can't really see it very well, but if you expand your screen, you'll see that we started out in 2016, not even inside. And in 2 years, we accelerated up into that leader quadrant. And that, as an analyst, right, former analyst, I'm looking at that, that's a significant leap. And so not something to take lightly, I think. I think it's important for you as customers looking at solutions, looking at the vendors that are out there. When you see something like this, when you see that massive leap, that should give you peace of mind that things are going right, that we're doing something right, we're listening to you, and that's why we ended up in that leader quadrant.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Yeah, and it's also kind of our longevity there and our space in the leader quadrant also represents kind of our fullness of vision, right? So like we really understand what our customers are using us for. We understand how customers are moving their data into the cloud and the technology that they need in order to make that happen. And all of that goes into the factors of why Gartner would put us in that in the upper right hand quadrant and continue to give us the awards that they give us. So it's a really great point. Thanks for jumping in, Dave. And so we talk a lot about freeing the file system, and there's two sides of it, right? You can see it on the slide. There's on premises and in the cloud. Our software is the exact same, regardless of where you run it, right? So it's the same features, the same functionality, the same versions, the same bug fixes go into both on-prem and cloud technology deployments from us. On-prem, we don't require proprietary hardware, so we sell through HPE, we sell through Arrow as a channel partner, and then we also sell through Supermicro. And then on the cloud, we support all of the cloud that are, well, I mean, all the big ones, right? We support Amazon, AWS, and GCP. We've given you the ability to take any of the risk out of moving data into the cloud because it looks the exact same as what you would be doing on-prem. So you can test anything that you'd like to test on-prem with our physical hardware or with a virtual machine. You can move that data up into the cloud. You can do all your testing in the cloud, shut it down when you're done. It's really, really powerful. There's no need to re-architect or refactor the applications that you're using in the cloud. So we look just like a file system, right? Because that's what we are. And so if your applications are expecting NFS and SMB, if they're expecting the ability to write data with one application in NFS and then read data with another application in SMB, all that works the same for us in the cloud the way it would do on-prem. And it really is just kind of a very powerful statement, particularly when you compare us to the offerings that the hyperscalers provide, whether it's AWS, GCP, or whoever. Our customer support is world class, and it's completely focused on you. So every customer gets a customer support manager. That customer support manager monitors that customer Slack channel, has the ability to engage with engineering resources or support resources as needed. Our engineers take rotations on customer success so that they're able to really understand what's going on from a customer side. It's just really powerful. And it gives us the ability to provide a product that is completely world-class. It changes the way that you think about the way file storage should work, either on-prem or in the cloud. And the last bullet point on the bottom right, hyperscale for file data in the cloud. One of the things that we really like to talk to our customers about is that we support multi-petabyte deployments on-prem and in the cloud with the same level of ease. And that's kind of remarkable. Most of the cloud offerings that you'll see from our competition, either Dell EMC or NetApp or whomever, they're very limited in the size of the offering that they can put in the cloud. They have to do a bunch of kind of ridiculous tiering and moving data around, and that puts a lot of risk into your deployment, right? What if somebody needs that data and it needs to be rehydrated off of another tier or something like that? Qumulo simply builds our clusters in the cloud with nodes, and then we let customers continue to expand that in AWS and GCP. Actually, in Azure, it's offered as a service, so you don't even have to worry about the expansion. We handle all of that on the back end, and you just continue to store data the way you need to store data. Oops, I double-clicked, sorry. This is my last slide, and then I'll hand it over to Aaron. So, I talked about scaling as big as you want. Security does come standard with our product, so we offer software-based encryption on all of our platforms in hardware versions, right? All the platforms that ship. We support the encryption of all of the cloud providers that we work with. So that's AWS, GCP, and Azure, to make sure that you can feel safe and secure that your data is stored, properly and securely. The real-time visibility is kind of the core of what Qumulo offers, and really is one of the things that we use to differentiate. You can see anything that you want to see about your data, where it's being used, who's accessing it, the throughput, where the data is being written to or removed from on your file system. All of that data is tracked. All the information that you've got there is tracked and able to go back in time. So you can go back and see when did somebody delete some data. Where did the big data increase come from last night? How come I'm out of data storage space already? Those kinds of questions that have plagued administrators since the dawn of time, right? We give you complete access to that. Understanding who's speaking loudly to the array, like is somebody driving a lot of IOPS? Is somebody driving a lot of throughput? Those kinds of things. And then really also making sure that the array is well balanced so that like everybody's accessing the array distributed across multiple nodes, things like that, which can be sometimes a challenge, particularly in the cloud, right? You deploy some of our competitors' cloud solutions and you get, excuse me, kind of a black box. You don't know who's using it, how they're using it, what's going on with the storage. You might be able to see, that somebody's adding data or removing data, but you really have no idea of how it's being used. And that's problematic with an expensive cloud deployment or an expensive on-premises deployment. Everything Qumulo does is built off of APIs. So, excuse me, we use APIs to build our internal, we use the Qumulo published APIs to build our UI, to build our GUI, to build our command line interface. And you can use any of those same APIs. We have an API Explorer that's available through the GUI. So if you're trying to figure out how you would do something, how you'd figure out some data, how you'd query the array for something, you can use our Explorer to do that. And it gives you the ability to script and automate the deployment of Qumulo and all of the kind of continuing management of it. Deployment in the cloud can also be done through Terraform scripts and other kinds of cloud-based automations. And then we offer true cross-protocol SMB, NFS, POSIX permissions to make sure that you have the ability to support multiple applications, multiple ways of accessing it, those kinds of things. So Aaron will drop you into a little bit more of the technical details, but I'll be around for a little bit longer and answer some questions when we're done. Go ahead, Aaron.
All right, thank you, Tim. I'm Aaron Hirsch, Senior Systems Engineer with Qumulo. I have been with the company roughly 106 weeks now. Prior to coming over to Qumulo, I was with a large unstructured scale-out file system company that was acquired by EMC and then by Dell. I spent roughly a decade there. And prior to that, I was a NETAPP certified and a gambit of other roles, including running a data center. So I've got to play with a lot of different things and see a lot of stuff, and technology really gets me excited. And I say that for a reason. I've been told I talk really fast, so I will try to keep it slow. But as I start going, I'll get excited, and so I'll apologize up front. Now we do have a question in the chat, and Charles, I don't have that answer. We'll get it for you though as to what it is. I don't know if it's just
Chapa just answered. Chapa just answered.
Then
It's the magic quadrant for distributed file systems and object storage. The question from Charles was, what's the category for the MQ that we're listed in?
Beautiful. I didn't see the response. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure we had that covered. So I'm going to take a couple minutes here to discuss Qumulo, specifically scale, efficiencies, visibility, security, cloud federation, automation. So those are things that are very important to everyone. But before we get there, I think it's important to understand how NAS has evolved over the years. Traditionally, while NetApp did not create the NAS market, they really took it and they matured it and accelerated the NAS market out. And it works great for certain workflows. The caveats with those type of deployments are going to be around volumes and aggregates and flex vols. And then you start talking about limited number of capacity or file counts, the big one that we run into. So as you scale, and this is very important to keep in consideration, and what we're looking at here on the website is scale is not just capacity. It's performance, it's file count, it's capacity, it's everything that's going to encompass your application. Being able to move and be agile with your workflows as they change is really an important thing. ISILON was designed and came out in the 2000s. It really, so 20 years ago, 22 years ago almost. And both these technologies were designed before NVMe or Flash was even considered, really, especially in the data center. So they have customized hardware, whether it's PAM cards or NVMe cards, that they have requirements to really drive their performance and give you some of the benefits that they bring. The downside with that is you have to be really reactive. There went a light. Reactive to get things. So when Qumulo was designed, what we did is we took the file system, we flipped it on its head. When you write data in and out, we bubble the data up, so we're not reactively going to look for things. Tree walks, for example, those are a thing of the past. We don't have to do that to find out where the data is. We store it in distributed key value pair. We know where the data is. And leveraging different tools and APIs, you have full access to that. So really, it allows you to be, it gives you real-time analytics and visibility, as Tim had mentioned, to things that are going on in your file system. It changes everything around. You don't have to create volumes, LUNs, aggregates, disk pools, create data migration policies. All this is handled within the software in itself, from data protection to where the data is going to go. It's really simple from that aspect. So with that little bit of history in there, we'll dive into the slides. We're going to talk to them, not really read them. I figure we can all read. So as I mentioned, scale. Billions of files, petabytes of capacity, flash first. And when we say flash first, every block of storage that's ever been written to a Qumulo cluster has gone either on SSD or NVMe. There are 3 different types of platforms that we support, but we're going to talk specifically around the hybrid. And essentially what that means is as you write data into a Qumulo cluster, we abstract the metadata out, that bubble up that I talked about, put it in a distributed key value pair that goes on the SSD or NVMe, depending on the class of node that you have. And then as the data gets cold, we use a least recently used algorithm to cache and I can't even talk, sequentially buffer the data down to spinning disk. So that's the write path. The read path is very similar. You go to get the data. If it's not on SSD or NVMe, what happens is your first couple blocks are going to come off spinning disk, and then we're going to prefetch and intelligent prefetch the data to promote it up into either SSD or into memory, depending on what the data looks like, just so you're getting sub-millisecond access on 90+% of your reads that are occurring. We say billions of files and petabytes. We're selling ourselves short. I mean, quintillions of files and exabyte of capacity is really what we're capable of. But when you say those numbers, everyone looks at you with a kind of a queer eye, look like, what are you talking about? Just it doesn't work properly. Can I control these? I can. There we go. We use erasure encoding for our data protection, and really the benefit of that is, as in compared to some of our competition, we write at a 4K block. But when we talk about capacity, we're talking about spinning disk capacity. So if you buy a NETAPP or an ISILON specifically, and they say, hey, I'm going to give you a petabyte of capacity, you're like, well, what am I going to get out of that? The concept you're going to get is addressable space. You have addressable space to use whatever you want to, but they're protecting the data and we're protecting the drive. So we write in a 4K block and we do our erasure coding across virtual LUNs that Qumulo takes care of, nothing for you to do on all the drives. So you can literally run your capacity from an aspect of how much you're using to 100% and still have full read-write access from a performance standpoint, because all that's done in the SSD. Now, writing at a native block size and protecting at the drive layer versus a file layer allows us to really be more efficient in how you're writing your data and what you're getting out of your storage. So back to a petabyte's a petabyte on Qumulo, and you get all of it. We're not going to tell you 70, 80, 90%. You have to do abnormal things. You have to delete data to do upgrades. You're going to see performance degradation at 85%. Because we know where the data blocks are, that bubble up I talked about, we can literally run to 100%, given your workflow remains the same at the same performance criteria.
And that slide's even more impressive when you think about the other guys have to have, in order to get more efficiency, they have to have their compression deduplication. Correct. Because of what you're seeing there on the screen. We're doing this because we're just that efficient. We don't have compression deduplication. You might say, oh, that's a negative for Qumulo. Well, take a look at the difference, and you see why we don't have to have that, why we don't have to have that additional overhead like the other guys have to.
Very good point, Mr. Chapa. So to that setup, we get asked all the time, why don't you have dedupe? Why don't you have compression? And it's not that we're not looking at it. The data sets that we're going with and what we're seeing our clients' data sets dedupe or compress to that point, it doesn't make a lot of sense. If you're getting 20% in a general workflow dedupe or compression ratio, and we're giving you 30%, aren't you getting more capacity and saving, being more storage efficient with us than you are with the competition? Real-time analytics. You heard David talk about it. You heard Tim talk about it. You heard me talk about it. Really driving factor and a differentiator for us versus everyone else in the market. This is not a third-party application. I'm not sending data into Splunk or Elasticsearch or Superna or whatever it may be. This is built into the management dashboard. The bubble up that I talked about, metadata is key with files, so remember that. The bubble up that happens gives us the visibility to see the IOPS, the throughput, the speeds and feeds of everything that's occurring on the file system in real time. So I don't have to go pull a packet capture to find out who was doing something, and then I pulled it too late and I didn't catch it anyways, and I've got 3 gig of data I got to parse through to find out what's going on. In real time, you can go look, okay, I'm who's my top IO offender? Click, and you sort it up or down. You can see who's doing the least, what's going on from a throughput, what about a metadata perspective? And in the metadata scheme, you start talking about that, really it can drive bad behaviors, but it can also drive visibility into what those bad behaviors are doing. And I'll mention ransomware. I'm not saying this is going to fix ransomware for you, but if the first thing ransomware is going to do is it's going to go scan your file shares. What's out there that I can change? That's a metadata update. So as you see abnormalities and how that's being accessed, you can start crimping down on what users are doing. fire it into your Splunk, your Elasticsearch, your SIEM, and take proactive measurements to ensure that it doesn't get any worse than it already is to start with. Instantly, billions of files scale. The largest single, and Dave and Tom, keep me honest here, maybe it's bigger now, the largest single file system from a file count that I'm aware of that we currently have is over 50 billion files in one cluster. So that's a lot of files.
And one of those customers is mine, and their cluster grows by 6 million-ish files a day.
Yeah. I mean, it just continues to go. And there's no delays, no slowdowns. The federation of that metadata, the bubble up so you're not looking for things, really allows us to do it. And take that a step further, if you liken that to data protection, actually, let me put a pin in that because we're almost there. Some of the things that we're hearing from clients, real-time information, where is it at? It's not there. What directory? What folder? Inside IQ, Superna. You're auditing and sending feeds elsewhere to try to get the visibility in there. It's really hard to see what's going on. Qumulo, the goal is to protect your data and make it easy on you. You shouldn't have to go looking for things. It should be there. Now there may be things that you want that we're not presenting natively in the dashboard. We can look at adding it, or we are API first. From that perspective, you can query and create your own dashboards to have whatever you wanted in it. Security comes standard. Data at rest. There's no secondary license, no charge for it from a hardware or software perspective. It's built into the file system. We use a 256-bit encryption cipher that we offload to the Intel or the AMD hardware, so there's zero performance degradation from that aspect. So you're getting data protection on every block of storage written into the cluster by default at zero performance penalty, zero cost to you. The erasure coding, it doesn't impact that at all, but to that point is, if I fail a drive or I fail a node, in our competitors, what happens is you have to go through and you do a lin scan, or a tree walk, if you will, to find out what's out there, and you start rebuilding the data structures. Depending on how large your cluster is, the number of objects in it, the drive size, et cetera, that may be a couple hours, it may be a couple days. I've seen it take months to rebuild drives. Because the first thing you have to do is do the tree walk. You have to find the changes, what went on there. Because we understand that and we know what's in the file system, when a drive fails and we go to do a rebuild, we're not doing a lin scan. What we do is we look at the drive that disappears, so we know that which protection and which data blocks were on there, and we rebuild that across the entire cluster. We've got an old demo cluster that we used to do a lot of stuff. It's really old hardware. I've seen that rebuild drives or data in excess of 9 terabyte an hour, under load. So it goes to how smart this file system is and what it can do, because we know where the data blocks are. We know how to share the data. We're truly, from a file locking perspective, globally across the schema. And the erasure encoding is built into the file system, not added onto it. And we the features you expect. Efficient snapshots and replication, we use those 2 different ways. As I'm sure you guys are familiar with. If you want more information on that, let us know. I know that we're getting low on time, so I'm going to keep moving forward here. And then encryption over the wire. NFS is coming. We have it for SMB. We have it for the REST API. We have it for FTP. So your data can be encrypted from point to point all the way through its life cycle, whether it's coming from the client to the cluster, or replication from cluster A to cluster B, or out into an S3 bucket with our shift and shift back. We talk about cloud a lot. It's really important. It's freedom. It lets you do what you want to do, when you want to do it, for what applications make sense. We call it cloud smart. It's not moving all my data to the cloud. It's not a lift and shift. What applications make sense? NFS, SMB, REST API, we help make that move for you. Or if you're just looking at doing bursting, the ability to spin up instances in the cloud and do data replication from an on-prem cluster into a cloud cluster, do your compute and just spit your results out. So your ingress and egress fees are minimized, as well as the compute, spin it up and down. Or if you don't have a DR site and you want to do a DR in the cloud, we have the ability to help you with that as well. It's really about allowing you the freedom of choice for the applications and where it belongs within your business lifecycle. We talked about automation. That's really our API. Flash first from a data read-write perspective, API first from a feature functionality. We mentioned licensing a little bit. Once you're a Qumulo customer, given that you're under subscription/support, anything that we develop, time travel, whatever it may be, you get for free. We're not going to come back to you and be like, hey, we've got this new feature, this new license. Go ahead and buy it. Let's do this. You get it all, carte blanche. And everything is going to be in the API. So automate. We're strong believers that if you're going to do a task more than once, you should automate it. Let's remove human error. I fat fingered the path. Oh no, I deleted like a whole file system. I've seen it happen with other clients, and really the ability to automate that is something that sets us apart from everyone. And we're continuing to make our automation and our API more user-friendly. So everything you want to be. XPP, cross-platform protections or permissions, the ability to NFS, SMB, REST API, FTP, all with a centralized authentication schema. You're getting the same permissions across the board, regardless of what protocol you're coming in and talking to the cluster with. So you have the security that you've set, that your business demands for every protocol that's available to the clients. And really, if you look at it, you either have it on or off with Qumulo, and really it's for all intents and purposes, it's on. Whether you're sharing your exports and your SMB shares to the same data structure or not, that's what defines that. Whereas our competition, there are so many bells and whistles that you can tweak. And then once you start changing them, how does that impact the rest of the data workflow? Are my POSIX bits right? Are my NFS bits from a before right? Are my Windows NTFS LCLs? What am I adhering to? Really, over 110,000 different permutations. I've done it. I was there, but it's not the best way of doing things. And a big chunk of this, I'll say it again, comes back into the metadata indexing. Where do we store it? We are a software company. This allows us to use just commodity hardware, which allows us to be more green than our competition can be most of the time, because we don't have those requirements of PAM cards or NVMe. I'm not trying to fit different pieces in to make my software run on a piece of hardware that really nobody cares about. And as we do our code and get more efficient with that, that also drives down the cost of the code running itself for CPU, memory, etc. I talked about licenses. Big one here, ISILON. There's a license for everything. Everything. Now, I will say not everything costs, but there is a license for everything you do on the ISILON. If you walk by it and you sneeze, Inside IQ is going to stop. It's FSA. Everything's a license. One license, everything there. On-prem or in the cloud, even more important, you have the right to move your license to a different platform should you feel like want to. So you may buy on-prem and then decide you want to move to the cloud. If you're going to move that out to the cloud, that license will go with you, or you can bring it back, vice versa. So that's all built into that schema. And I believe at this point, I'm handing it back over to Tim. Yeah, don't look like that, Tim. This is all you.
Me? Really?
Or was this Chapa? This is not me. This is not me.
Whichever. I'm fine to do it. So we talked about the freedom of the file system. I've mentioned it more than once, right? Anything on-prem can run on HPE hardware, Fujitsu hardware, Supermicro, Qumulos, white boxes that are sourced through Arrow, right? We've got a ton of options for you there, including the ability to mix and match clusters, which is really powerful, right? So you're not stuck. If you started with an HPE cluster and you want to switch to something else, you're not stuck. You can make that switch. And then from a cloud native perspective, Azure, AWS, and GCP, it all runs the same, which is really, really powerful. It lets you move your data through from one cloud to another, from on-prem into the cloud, from the cloud back down on-prem, based on the needs of your business, right? None of these decisions that you're making kind of paint you into a corner around, now I'm stuck and I have to do a big, expensive migration to get out of there. We can move data, give you the ability to innovate quickly, and all the powerful data services that you would expect out of an enterprise class product.
And again, I'll just chime in here from an analyst perspective. This is really cool, because when I was talking with customers, one of the biggest challenges, and some of you can chime in the chat if you agree or disagree with me, was simply just having choice. There's a vendor lock-in field that many customers would get into if they go to buy NetApp or they buy ISILON. They're kind of locked in to that particular platform, that particular hardware set. And what I like about Qumulo, even before I joined Qumulo, was that they had this vision and this direction of truly disaggregating the software from the hardware, giving customers choice to choose which platform they want to run on. And that is really about freeing the file system. That's really freeing you up as the customer to make your decision based on your needs, based on your objectives for your data and your environment, and not us having to force you to buy a certain shape widget.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. It really, so much of what I love about Qumulo, and I've been here for 2 years now, is about how few of the choices you make when you buy and deploy Qumulo feel permanent, feel like you've made a decision that forces your hand for the next 3 or 4 years, right? So you decide to start with HPE, you switch to something else. You decide to start with Fujitsu, you can switch to HPE midstream in the cluster. You build your cluster with 4 nodes, you want to scale it to 40, that's fine. We can support that. You want to transition from storing a lot of little files to storing big files, that all works. It's simple and easy, and there's really no kind of gotchas from an architectural perspective that really get you stuck. We talked a little bit about Gartner already. We talked about the fact that this is the Magic Quadrant for distributed file systems and object storage. We've been in it since 2018. We certainly expect to be in it again for 2021. And it reflects a completeness of vision, our ability to do the job that we've said that we've done. Overall, how happy our customers are with the technology and the decisions we're making about our roadmap, things like that. And then there's a bunch of other stuff. Winner of, we won for some of our cloud products around Cloud Studio. We were Data Storage Company of the Year. We're kind of racking up the awards and really proud of the company that we're building here. And so I think the last part of this is kind of a call to action, right? So there's a bunch of ways to learn more about our solution and the way that we do technology. So you can go to Qumulo.com/compare, and there's a migration guide. There's comparisons to our major competitors, those kinds of things. If you go to Qumulo.com/try, then you can actually kind of walk through a functional environment in your browser. I've been a part of the build out of that. It's really fun. So feel free to go and explore and do that kind of stuff. Then you can also reach out to us for info@Qumulo.com, Qumulo.com/get started. Chapa, myself, and Aaron are all on LinkedIn and able to be available to you guys to answer questions as well. And we can just kind of go from there. Does anybody have any questions? Do you want to throw some questions in the Q&A box? Anything that we didn't cover? Those kinds of things.
One of the questions that came in that I didn't answer, I figured we would answer it live, was just comparing how we scale to NetApp. What's that difference and how does that look?
Yeah, so I'm the one who worked for NetApp. Aaron worked for Dell EMC, so I'll take the NetApp question. So NetApp's great technology, right? It's been around a really long time. They've got a bunch of features. They've got some features that we just don't have, right? It's just part of the function of them having developed their software for a long time. But they were originally architected on a 2-node scale-up kind of methodology, right? 2 nodes, HA pairs, and then they've built a bunch of cluster data ONTAP technology that kind of virtualizes those pairs and makes them available for a scale-out file system. But you really have to know how big that file system thinks it's going to get. You have to thin provision your volumes in order to make sure that the volumes can grow, because you're basically allocating out the file system before you're consuming it. So you need to kind of manage a bunch of those bits and bytes to it. It's very possible for you to have a single file that is larger than one of your constituent objects, which would be a problem, right? So if an individual volume is 20 terabytes and you stitch together 10 of those to build a 200 terabyte file system, well, that means that your maximum file size is 20 terabytes, which, for some customers is not a big deal, but for other customers can be a real problem. It's also easy to get hotspots developed in those file systems, right? Because the clusters don't automatically rebalance the workload across all the nodes in the cluster. And so one of the things that I was really kind of blown away by inside of Qumulo is we start with a 4-node cluster. We add nodes 5, 6, and 7. The cluster will automatically redistribute all of the data, not the files, the actual data that's supporting those files across the entire file system, across the entire cluster. Any node can be, the node that somebody chooses to use to access the file system. So we use kind of just a simple DNS round robining to make sure that we distribute workloads across all the nodes in the cluster. And as we add nodes to the cluster, it just will continue to automatically redistribute. We've got features on the roadmap that should be delivered in the near term that allow us to manage erasure coding, so that when you add nodes to the cluster, you can kind of restripe the cluster if that's something you're interested in. We also have the ability to replace nodes as a part of our roadmap. So you'll be able to say, I have this cluster that I originally built with these older nodes, and I don't want to do a data migration. I just want to take out a node and put in a new, faster node, and then do it again and next and next and next, and kind of upgrade your cluster that way. And we offer all of that as well. So there's a ton of technology here that we give you the ability to use. I just saw that there was a question about software upgrades as well. And so NetApp software upgrades, and Aaron can talk to the EMC software upgrade process. NetApp software upgrades are fairly non-disruptive, right? Because you upgrade node A and it fails, and then you fail that over and flip over and you upgrade node B. Qumulo does it a little differently. When you upgrade a cluster, you make the upgrade available to the entire cluster. The software handles the copy of the data and making sure that the upgrade has been stored on every node and all those kinds of things. And then we start a container with the new software image, and then just simply flip over from the old software image to the new software image. So there's really kind of minimal downtime or minimal disruption. Most of our customers do upgrades quarterly. Some of them do them every other week because that's how often we ship new code. But regardless, it becomes kind of a non-issue, right? You just upgrade the cluster when you're ready to, versus it being kind of a big prep thing that you have to really kind of stage and get worried about, those kinds of things.
We got a couple more questions from actually a fellow Coloradan here. So Mark is asking, I'm hearing noise about Nasuni. Are you a similar solution or different? So let me give you my little 2 second, and I'll let the guys respond. We're very different. So Nasuni really is, you talk about a vendor lock-in solution, they are the definition. You have to have their caching device on premises to be able to push and pull data into the Nasuni cloud. Nasuni does not scale that much or that well. And so there is a challenge with scale. You end up having multiple silos of Nasunis to achieve the scale that you need. The other thing too about the caching mechanism, it's not easy to get data out. If you want to evacuate Nasuni and go to a different solution, it is very difficult to do that. And I know from firsthand experience when I was running a consulting business out of Chicago, and we had a very large customer with lots of data, and getting it out was going to be extremely expensive and extremely time consuming. So there's major differences between us and Nasuni. Again, we give you the freedom. We're not locking you in. We're not going to make you have this caching device that you got to carry with you from site to site. So that's one big difference there. Is there anything else you guys want to add about the differences?
So Nasuni and Qumulo are fundamentally built for different things, right? Nasuni's great for a customer who has a set of data that they want to have accessible in a read-write format in multiple sites, and they use the cloud as kind of the transport mechanism behind that, right? So like if you have engineers in Chicago and in Poland or something along those lines, and you want to make sure that they all have the same data set, that it's accessible on both those sites, it's great, right? It really works well. But Qumulo was built from the ground up to be an active file system, and we are really kind of targeted towards large. Large is a bad term. Like the real industry standard for it is big data. We're targeted towards big data workloads, and that can be in terms of velocity, like how fast is the data being moved, the volume of data, so the number of files, the size of, and the variety of data. So that's what we're really good at. What we don't do is we don't share a namespace across multiple sites like Nasuni does. So if you need one namespace in Chicago and Poland, to keep my same example, that's not something that Qumulo does really well. We can kind of work through it with a cloud deployment of Qumulo, but it's not kind of a cached native thing for us. Right. So if you need that, you need Nasuni. If you need a great file system that can scale and can do a lot of interesting things both on-prem or in the cloud, then I think Qumulo is the right solution for that.
So Mark also asks about our NFS support, because they have Oracle servers, and they need a place to do the export dumps.
Yep, we are great dump target for Oracle database dumps. So it's a workload that we've got very well deployed for a bunch of our customers. We can do high performance, so we have an all NVMe node. If performance speed is kind of one of the things that you're thinking of, then an NVMe cluster is the way to go. We have plenty of customers who do it just onto our hybrid nodes or even onto our active archive nodes. So we've got some great technology there.
Yeah. And Oracle will say, hey, I want NFS like 4.2 and blah, blah, blah. You don't need any of that for it, to be completely honest. But to Tim's point, we have very large customers running, petabytes of backups a day to the Qumulo.
Right. So, and we have many of them actually leveraging RMAN. They're not just doing the export dumps; they're actually using RMAN and targeting us for those same reasons. So, Mark, there's lots of a variety of options for protecting your Oracle databases with us. and we'd love to talk to you more about that. Any more questions? I know we're running up on time here. I want to be sensitive to everyone's time. Okay, I don't see any more coming in. Let me just take this moment to thank both Tim and Aaron for joining me on this webinar. They really are the smart ones in the room, and it was certainly educational, I think, for a lot of people. I think we had some great questions here. I want to thank all the attendees for spending some of your day with us. Please go and check out the links. I'll go back here again. Go check out Qumulo.com/compare and go to Qumulo.com/try, and definitely go and read the blogs we have. Go and look at the assets and resources we have available to you on our website, and reach out to any of us. As Tim said, we are all on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on Twitter. You can find me pretty easily. You can find these guys as well. But we're here to help you. So if you have additional questions, you have other concerns, you want to actually get a team in there to come and talk to you and your folks, we can help get that set up. So again, on behalf of Tim and Aaron and Qumulo, I want to thank you again for your time, and we will call this a wrap. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Stay safe.